This is a Kansas Blotter interview with Iris Moulton. I'm interviewing Iris today on Wednesday, November 4th, 2009 in Lawrence, Kansas. Iris Moulton is a writer who was born and raised in Salt Lake City, Utah. Her first collection of poetry, Where the Echoes Go, was published by Push Publications in 2005. You can purchase Iris's book from a variety of online sources such as Amazon, Alibris, or Powell's Bookstore. Iris's poetry will also appear in issue 11 of Cider Press Review in the spring of 2010. Cider Press Review's website address is www.ciderpressreview.com. Iris currently lives in Lawrence, Kansas, where she is an MFA candidate in poetry and short fiction at the University of Kansas. She toured with the Crate Lung Co-op, along with several musicians and visual artists during the winter of 2008 and 2009. Hi, Iris. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Let's see, my first question for you. So, you're still currently a member of the Crate Lung Co-op?
I am.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm really curious about this. I wanted to know, could you describe the co-op a little bit and maybe provide Crate Lung's superhero origin story and and talk about what it was like going on tour with the co-op? So.
Yeah. Crate Lung probably started at a point of disintegration, I think. But it really started with the core members, which were John LaMonica, the musician, Christina Gunn, the visual artist, cartoonist, and craft maker, and then myself, the writer. And Christy and I actually met when we were working in the same restaurant, and we just immediately bonded. And then her boyfriend's John LaMonica, the musician, and we all became good friends. And then pretty soon this idea of an art and music tour started getting batted around. And finally they just formally said one day, we want to go, do you want in? And I took time to think about it and finally said yes. And we started as a collective of Christy, John, myself, and then two other guys that at the very last minute dropped off of the tour, but were able to send their work with us. And then my sister came. Hallie Rose Taylor came as our other visual artist.
Is she? So this is a little off topic, but in your book, there's a picture. Is that her? Is that your sister's?
The painting.
Painting? Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's
yeah.
really, so. This actually leads into another question I had too. So you all met in where was it in Utah? In Salt Lake City.
Mm-hmm.
And so did you do sort of performances or sort of show your art together when you were still in Salt Lake City before going on tour, or was this the tour kind of the idea? Did the idea for the tour sort of come about like on its own?
The tour came about on its own. I would say everybody had their own shows and their own venues separately. And the co-op came together as the idea of the tour was to launch the co-op. And then, coincidentally, about a couple months after we returned from tour, John and Christy and I had lunch, and they said, we have something to tell you. We're moving to Lawrence, Kansas. And I said, well, I have something to tell you. So am I. And
so did you guys neither? So you had come to that decision
separately.
How did you guys decide on Lawrence? Was it someplace that you'd gone like on the tour? Or?
John had come several times before on his tours as a musician. And
okay.
He always loved it. He always thought he'd want to live here. And then that was one reason why Lawrence made our tour dates with the Crate Lung Co-op, was just because we wanted to see it. And when I saw it, that was a big part of my decision to solidified my decision to apply and consider it, and it just worked out that everyone moved here at the same time. Hallie is living in Austin, Texas, and then the other two people who sent work are still back in Salt Lake City.
That is so interesting. That was a big question of mine, just sort of how you guys discovered Lawrence. So can you, and I know I'm going to be sort of displaying my ignorance here, but can you kind of describe a little bit, like what would you guys do when you went on tour? Were there sort of, was it partially like a music show, or can you kind of just describe what you guys did? Yeah.
Well, we traveled in this big 12-person white van that was just loaded with winter coats and sunflower seeds and musical equipment and art equipment, and we would pull into a venue that we'd booked ahead of time, and John would either be playing a DJ set or an acoustic music set, depending on what the venue had booked ahead of time. And we would always set up just an enormous merch table with crafts and then my books. And my sister, Hallie, had painted matchbooks, and different paintings were available. We'd made prints of collaborative drawings that some of the members of the co-op had done, where one person would draw part and pass it. So we had a lot of prints available, and we would sell all of this merchandise, T-shirts and things like that, as a merch table during the music show. That's
really interesting. Did you, so as you said, sort of maybe some of the members would produce these, like these drawings, these sort of collective works. Did they produce those like while you guys were actually on the tour, like continuing to work as you guys traveled, or was most of the work produced at home and then brought on tour with you?
As far as the collaborative drawings go, they were done in Salt Lake City, and the members who didn't come did a substantial amount of the collaborative drawings. There was a lot of work being done while we were on tour. In every hotel room or living room where we stayed, their matchbooks were being painted for the next show,
nice.
Or the handmade teddy bears that we were working on, a substantial amount were made here in Lawrence to catch up at the halfway point through the tour. So there was a lot of work being done on tour, but most of it was done back in Salt Lake to prepare.
Did you ever did you do some reading of your work along with like this sort of music shows or any on the tour? Or
it was something that we talked about and that I'd considered doing, that I was certainly invited to do by the members of the co-op and sometimes at venues, but I didn't want to. And it's really hard to articulate why I didn't want to, but I felt that having the poetry out as a book was enough, and the places that we were going to, I think I would have felt uncomfortable reading. I'm not big on public readings very often, but
I think I understand what you mean. Like I have mixed feelings about that, and I don't know. I'm somebody, I guess, who I go to a lot of readings, but I love having. I feel like I'm missing so much by like not being able to kind of engage with the poem visually, like the way you could see it on, you know. And I don't know. I've brainstormed like ways that you could sort of work around that, like, but the only thing I can come up with is if you somehow like passed out copies of it at a reading, which then seems to me sort of strange to be like, here's my stuff, you know, for you to hold while I'm at this reading too. Do you enjoy giving readings then, or not very much with your own work?
I went through a period of time back in Salt Lake City when I had a big community of writers and lots of venues where I was reading probably like 5 times a week.
Whoa.
And that sustained for a year.
That's a lot.
It was a lot.
That's a lot.
And so I think that I just burnt myself out, and I'm still kind of recovering from that. So I do enjoy reading, but it's just not my usual favorite place to show.
No, I understand what you mean. Let's see, can I ask you a Utah question?
Yeah,
okay.
You can ask
I'm
me
kind
as
of
many Utah questions
for me,
as you want.
I mean, just in terms of full disclosure, like, you know, I'm a Northwesterner originally, and I've bounced around like between Kansas and the Northwest a number of times, and so as a result, like, I will drive through Utah frequently. I think I've only ever stopped like on a Greyhound bus. Like one day, I remember stopping in Salt Lake City, and it was a really strange experience, but I'm fascinated by it. Like, I'm fascinated by the landscape through driving through Utah. So I thought this is a great opportunity. I wanted to ask you, what are some specific places in Utah that haunt you? Is my first question.
Okay. Great question, because a lot of Utah haunts me. I would say the Great Salt Lake is something that I will always miss, and that I would say will always follow me. It's something that I spent a lot of time interacting with when I lived in Utah, and I think that I was probably the only non-tourist or maybe non-criminal who spent a lot of time at the Great Salt Lake.
Do criminals tend to hang out at the lake?
Yeah, there's a lot of syringes and beer bottles and graffiti and condoms, and the occasional dead body will stumble out from the bushes. But
so what would you do, like, when you would go out to the lake? Would you go by yourself, or would you go with people? Or
I've only gone by myself once or twice, and not because I'm scared or anything like that. It's just, for one thing, I'm always scared I won't be able to find it. I don't know why. But I've gone with friends. I think my most recent trip to the Great Salt Lake, I took my best friend, Greg, and we brought our cameras and a little bit of food and stuff to write with, and mainly it was just a photographic experience of the Great Salt Lake.